It would be better on the next run. Anyway, I thought I'd just give a brief update on the meeting we had in LA last year, but also on future developments. I think I think most of the people here actually know what went on. So, but for those of you who weren't, I'll just give a brief summary. We set up a group last year for the governance. This is made up of three groups. There's a project steering committee, which is made up of long-term partners. There's a technical advisory group, which is made up of those software developers, but also the technical support providers. And then finally, there's a community group, which is made up of users. They're the people who take forward and they can promote ideas about how arches they would like to see arches taken forward. The Getty, along with the Arcadia Fund and others, have generously contributed towards a fund to help um, ensure the long-term life of arches, and that be used to helping to take things forward. There was a formal launch last year. The groups have met a number of times now. The idea being that we meet 6 times a year virtually. There's a charter, as you can see, that's been put together, a draft charter. And we were fortunate enough in November, a number of us, I think there's 21 of representing 13 organisations across um, America, Europe, and elsewhere, to discuss the governance and how to take forward the Arches project, really. We looked at the charter and things that we discussed were how the groups can interact, how the groups themselves would work, um, ideas about how we can put forward proposals for developments in Arches. And we had some, there was a very useful conversation about open source and what open source means. Um, so from that and over this year, we're looking at refining the charter, but also documentation. Idea about say user documentation. The documentation that we've got so far is rather technical, so looking at ways of developing something that is easier for users to digest. How the groups, as I said, how the groups function, how they report to each other. I think the idea is that there will be representation on the various groups from the different boards. So, example, somebody from the technical would occasionally report to the project board and vice versa, just so that we can take ideas backwards and forwards. Looking at who the audience is for Arches, and I think there's the idea of having a audience survey. I think probably looking at how we can develop the wider audience, what kind of potential users would like to see in Arches, and finally improved community interaction. There's the idea of looking at a conference next year. That would be a developer slash community conference. As I said, about user documentation, improving that. Um, Also looking at how to submit proposed ideas to develop Arches, how the community and users can get more involved in the roadmap. Um, Also, some other ideas that we're looking at is, Arches and AI. Um, Providing a statement on how we see AI and Arches linking together. And finally, I think there's also the idea of looking at trying to have a community standard for accessibility with Arches. So that is a very quick run through. I don't know if George, Mike, Phil want to add anything to that.
Uh, no, not at the moment.
Very good summary. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. I think we all found it very useful. Um, the meetings that we have remotely are good, but nothing beats an in-person meeting. And I think it was great to meet everybody, and I think it really did. Everybody felt that it was something was happening. It was a big step forward, the governance, and hopefully this is going to take Arches in new directions. So that's, I think, enough from me. Any questions from anybody? If not, then I shall pass over to Phil, who's going to give us a discussion on lingo, please.
Yeah, my name's Phil Carlisle. I'm the Senior Data Standards Specialist for Historic England, and I am the subject matter expert for the Arches Lingo project, which is what I'm here to talk to about today. There are going to be some people on the call who aren't familiar with Arches, so I'm not going to go into massive detail, but just to say, Arches is an open source data management platform. It's been specifically designed to support documentation, management, and protection of cultural heritage. Originally developed by the Getty Conservation Institute with input from the World Monuments Fund as well, to address the global need for flexible, standards-based data management. At the highest level, it combines data management and data publishing, and its capabilities are organized into, oh, sorry. Oh, don't do that, Philip. Into three categories. So there's data management, there's data discovery and visualization, and project management and task management. And then right down in this little corner here, you'll see control vocabularies, which are part of the data management, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. The original Arches platform came with a reference data management tool that allowed you to import and create vocabularies to manage your data with. Lingo has consciously uncoupled that data management into its own separate application. So Lingo, how it fits into the Arches ecosystem, it's been developed as an application leveraging the core capabilities of the Arches platform for semantic data modeling and cultural heritage data management. It aligns with international standards like ISO 25964 for control vocabularies and integrates with ontologies such as Simple Knowledge Organization System or SCOS, the CDOT Conceptual Reference Model, the CRM, and linked art, ensuring that interoperability and best practice in vocabulary management are baked in. It's developed in collaboration with various knowledge organisation specialists, our own team at Historic England, the Getty Vocab programme have been involved in the development as well. We've spoken to various taxonomy specialists and stakeholders within the taxonomy and control vocabulary community as part of the development of the software. It can be installed as an Arches project alongside other modules such as the Arches Controlled List Manager and Arches query sets, making it a flexible component in a broader data management strategy. It provides a dedicated user interface for creating, editing, and navigating complex vocabulary structures, enhancing usability for curators and data managers, something that is often missed in other database systems that involve having controlled vocabularies. It's very simple normally. It's an open source software, so it's free like a puppy, not free like a beer. You can get the puppy and it's nice, but you've still got to maintain it and look after the puppy, as it were, rather than just taking the pint and drinking it. It's hosted on GitHub, invites contributions from the community, and it's a community-based system, ensuring transparency and collaborative evolution. So why Arches and Lingo? Well, Lingo Arches is already a powerful platform for managing cultural heritage data. But with the addition of Lingo, it now has a dedicated application with workflows allowing for the collaborative creation, maintenance, and publication of controlled vocabularies. And we'll find out why controlled vocabularies are important later on. Lingo has been designed in collaboration, as I said, with knowledge organisation specialists. It's been designed for us, by us, as it were. So finally, it's our time to shine. We get to play with some nice tools for once. It integrates seamlessly, as I've mentioned, with these other tools out there, Arches for HERs, Arches for Science, and Arches for reference and sample collections, which has been cunningly called Rascals. But it's not just limited to Arches-based systems. It will support non-Arches systems through export formats, the standard CSV export format, but also JSON, LD, SCOS, and other formats that we're planning to bring on board. These will allow the vocabularies to be exported and integrated into non-Arches platforms. Lingo also supports multiple languages and scripts, and with a bit of tweaking, the interface can be internationalized so that it can read from right to left, so that if you've got a non-Latin script that reads from right to left, and that's the way that you want to use Arches, then you can switch the screen so that it reads from right to left. It tracks contributions, maintains warrants for concepts and labels. So there's a full governance system baked into the development of the languages, and it helps us build fair data. So early in the development of Arches, we decided we'd focus on making sure that the data in Arches would persist and have longevity, regardless of how technology changes. To this end, all Arches features and all Arches applications utilize best practice in data creation and management, and Lingo is no different. This ensures that the data that's developed in Lingo is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, or fair in one word. And you'll see on the screen here some of the ways Arches ensures your data is findable by both humans and computers. By clearly and uniquely describing data, it ensures that data can be accessed via web interfaces with definable permissions. It ensures that your data can be interoperable by relying on common standards relevant to the field, and ensures that data can be as well described as possible, as determined by the community that use it, to make sure that the data can be reused. And particularly important for Lingo is the use of globally unique identifiers, persistent identifiers, so that when you use those vocabularies, you know that you're all using the same vocabulary and you're all using the same identifier, so you're all talking about the same concept. So moving on to Arches and control vocabularies. Why are they important? Well, let's walk through it. So this is an Arches instance. It's the Greater London Historic Environment Record, which Stuart manages. And as you can see here, I've typed the words public house into the search engine. I hope that's clear for you. It might be quite small, but that little blue box in the corner that says public house. And as you can see, there's a series of results, 2,167 results, some of which are public houses, pubs, and some of which are not. So Parliament Square, late medieval building. That text contains the word public and it contains the word house, but it doesn't talk about public houses. It's not talking about a pub. And if we look at the vocabularies and how we build vocabularies, we have a thesaurus called the Thesaurus of Monument Types, and it goes into quite a lot of detail as to how you can describe buildings, architectural buildings, archaeological sites. And as you can see, we have a branch here, eating and drinking establishments, which includes a concept called licensed premises, which has a child, which is public house. And that concept has a child itself, the beer garden. And if we go back to our search and we type in public house again, you'll see that below the search box now I've got two instances of public house, one that says recreational and one that says commercial, and they are actually concepts that are in that vocabulary. So now we're going to select one of those concepts and redo the search. So here we've selected public house in the recreational thing. And as you can see now, our results have gone down from 2,167 to 891. And these are instances of public houses in London. They have been verified as such. And I wouldn't be surprised if me and Stuart in our time have drank in pretty much every one of them. But if we then go, oh, it's a sunny day, we fancy a pint in London, what shall we do? Let's go to a beer garden. Let's see where there's some beer gardens in London. So I search on the concept of beer garden and I get one result, which again, I've drunk in more beer gardens in London than there are on this results page. So there's something going on. But this just means that the data has not been indexed with those concepts. But as you can see, we've got down to the King's Arms now. We've found our one building that we can go and sit and have a pint in the back garden of. And that shows us the strength and to a certain extent the weakness of using control vocabularies, because unless you've assigned that control vocabulary to your data set, you're not going to get any results. But conversely, you're also not going to get swimming pools that happen to mention Mr. Beer and Mr. Garden in their description. So Lingo gives us a tool to manage these vocabularies. And we start by talking about a scheme. And a scheme is, in its broadest sense, it's a collection of concepts that we want to be able to use to record information about archaeological sites, architectural buildings, and I'm going to be talking from the cultural heritage sector point of view. So that's not to say that lingo couldn't be used in any other sector. It can. There are control vocabularies out there in pretty much every sector. If you go to Taxonomy Bootcamp, which is on in April, you'll see presentations from banking and education sector. But obviously, I work for Historic England. Our remit is the built and buried heritage, so our vocabularies tend to focus on that. So here's the landing page when I first log into my instance of Lingo, and I can see that I've got all of these schemes that I'm able to use, able to create concepts in, edit, manage, and maintain, and make available to the wider community. So once I've logged in, if I wanted to, I could create a new scheme, and I can do that from scratch, or I could actually import a vocabulary that already existed. Vocabulary management is one of those things where if it already exists, then please try and reuse it, because it's a time and resource intensive process to actually create vocabularies from scratch. So if someone's already done a lot of the work for you, then by all means use their efforts as part of your work. And that's why we make all of our vocabularies freely available and license free, so that the community can speak the same language in its databases. And that way, nobody else has to go through the 20 odd, 30 odd years of work that we've put into these vocabularies. So focusing on one of those vocabularies, our largest, this is the thesaurus of monument types. The terminology contained therein includes public house, and it relates to built and buried heritage. And once I've logged in, I can go and explore what's in the concepts that exist within this vocabulary. And this is a typical page for a concept. So here you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, the actual concept itself, which is public house, the labels that are used there. So there's an English preferred label of public house. It has an alternative label of pub, another alternative label of roadhouse, another one of tavern. It's got a definition or a scope note, so we know exactly what we mean when we're talking about public house. There are currently no images associated with this concept, but there could be, so that for difficult concepts, you can say, well, I don't really know what we mean by claw beaker. So you could actually have an image of a claw beaker, so that somebody who's unfamiliar with the terminology can at least get some idea of what you're talking about. Associated concepts are concepts within the hierarchy that are related to each other. So the example I always use is a water wheel and a wind and a water mill. The water wheel is related to the water mill. It forms part of it, as it were. Matched concepts or links between vocabularies. So this allows us for the first time to interoperate our vocabularies with other external vocabularies. So if you're using the Getty AAT, for example, you could link through and say that my public house is the same as the concept in the AAT representing that idea. And then you can see at the bottom the hierarchical position of the concept as it sits. And then on the left-hand side, which is collapsible, you can see the hierarchy. And this allows you to browse through the hierarchy, but also manage and download various bits and bobs if you want. So yeah, just focusing more on this. So this is the entire hierarchy. Each of these little arrows is expandable. The circle allows you to focus in on a particular branch so that you're only seeing that. This is not live, and I'm trying to be live. This plus sign allows you to add a new concept below that chart parent. You can delete, or in certain instances, you can delete the concept. For the most part, you'll see in the top right-hand corner, we have this life cycle state. And a concept can be in 4 states. It can be draft, where it's not yet been published. So that's when if I'm building a vocabulary from scratch, and I don't want anyone to see it until it's done, I can play around in a sandbox. I can move the hierarchies. I can add vocabulary. I can take vocabulary away. I can change the spelling of things. I can change the definition of things. And until I've pressed publish, that's just only I can see that. So that's vocabularies are in a draft state. Once I've published it, it's assigned a URI, and that URI is persistent and will never be deleted. So I can't delete the concept once it's been published, but until it has been published, I can delete it. So while it's in draft form, it's deletable. Once it's been published, it can only be deprecated, and that's the 4th state of the life cycle. Once it has been published, if someone comes along and wants to contribute to that vocabulary and say, I've got a new concept for you or a new label, I can take it out of being published and put it into an editing state that allows me to make those changes, but doesn't change any of the concepts that are in there, doesn't remove the URIs that are already existent. It just allows me to make changes to that vocabulary before I republish it, and with the new vocabulary that's been added to it. As you can see at the moment, in this particular example, there are only English labels, but we've talked briefly about multilinguality and multi-scripts. So let's look at this more. And I did this talk at CAA UK, and we used to have an Arabic translation here. But after the talk, a lady from Palestine came up to me and said, "Who have you been talking to? Who's your Arabic translator?" And I said, "Oh, you know." And she said, "Because the Syrians, because it's not right. It's not right. That's not public house in Arabic." And I said, "Well, we just used Google Translate." So there's a little sort of like, caveat: do not use Google Translate to translate your terms. Go to a subject matter specialist. I'm not even sure if the Chinese is a true reflection of what the Chinese concept of a public house is. But what I am certain is, because our colleagues in the Royal Commission for the Ancient and Historic Monuments of Wales have their own thesaurus, I am certain that that Welsh label there, which I won't try and butcher it with poor pronunciation, is the concept of public house in Welsh. So I'm going to search Stuart's data set using the Welsh label, but I can't, obviously, because there's an English data set. He doesn't have that label in there. But what if I add that label? So I go into Lingo, I add the Welsh preferred label, and then I go and search. This is the standard search, so I can search for the concept of public, and as you can see here, it's giving me just anything with the word public in. Where it says things like art gallery in the scope note, it's probably likely that it says it's a public art gallery, or one of the non-preferred terms will be a public art gallery. And if I search now on the Welsh language term, you'll see that it's linked to the concept of public house. So what I can do now is I can now redo my search on the Welsh label, and it will bring up the same results as if I was searching on the public house concept, which I am. In actual fact, I'm just searching on the Welsh language label. So adding a new scheme. This is where we can start adding the metadata for that new scheme. We can add a label for it, so we can give it a new name, my thesaurus. And then you'll see that over on the right in the editing toolbox, there's a lot of drop downs that allow us to say what type the label is, what language the label's used in, who contributed the label or the language for this, or the actual scheme itself, and any sources that were used for the creation of that scheme. And over on the left, you'll see each of those blocks: scheme label, scheme notes, scheme namespace, standards, and rights. If I click on those, the correct corresponding panel, editing panel, will open up on the right hand side. And this is where we can add a scheme namespace, so that once the scheme is published, that namespace will be used to create the persistent URIs. And we can say that which standards have been used to create the scheme. We can say which rights there are associated with the scheme, whether or not it's an open government license, or we make the vocabulary available through Creative Commons, or whether it's copyright and no, you can't use it actually. You can manage which languages you want to be used in the vocabulary. So here, for example, we're going to say that this new scheme can use English, German, and French. But that's not to say you can't expand that. This is a provisional look as well, by the way. So a lot of this is currently changing, and as we test the software, the beta version, we're improving on the layout of this and what things happen and which buttons work and which buttons don't. Adding a new concept is a similar principle. As you can say, you can either go in and add it through going through the hierarchy and clicking on the plus button. Once you've done that, you can type the label for it, and again go through the whole process of adding a definition, adding images. And images is one of those things that Lingo brings newly to the table. A lot of our vocabulary systems in the past were purely textual based, and so you had to have some understanding of what the terminology, what the vocabulary was, for you actually to be able to really understand the data set. So interoperability is also a big thing that we're really interested in, and the ability to sort of like share information between vocabularies. So at the moment, as you can see, public house, it has no links to any matched concepts, but I do know that the AAT, the Getty AAT, includes a record for pubs. So they use the label of pubs for the concept, but it's the same concept. So I can now go into my instance of Lingo and I can add that there's an exact match between my concept and the Getty AAT concept of pubs. So that now means that should you so wish, you could, if you're searching using the AAT, and there's a reciprocal link in the AAT to my instance of Lingo, to this particular vocabulary, you might get results back from my data sets that have used my vocabulary as well. And that's building those networks of knowledge up is one of the benefits of being able to do that. So once you've built your vocabulary, you want to export it. You want to be able to make it available. So as you can see, you can export either the concept or the concept and the children. So if you wanted the entire thesaurus, you could export from the top down, or just export this one concept because you only want to used one concept. And that brings us to the controlled list manager, which again is a new application within Arches. It's going to replace some of the functionality in version 8 versions of Arches onwards. And it's how Arches instances, whether they be Arches for HER or Arches for Science or Arches Rascals, how those instances would interact with a lingo instance. So how you get the vocabulary from my source of truth, my lingo instance, and build it into your data sets. So what you can do here is, as you can see, you can import controlled lists directly in a SCOS file. So you don't have to have an API or a direct link to Lingo, although you can. But what you can do is subscribe to a Lingo service and say, I like those vocabularies. Could you please send me the SCOS file or the JSON LD file for this particular vocab? You then import that in, and then that can create the controlled lists, the drop downs that you use in your data set. So here we can see in the controlled list manager, we've brought in that hierarchy from eating and drinking establishment ready to use in our data set. And just to go back, I was talking about images, and as you can see now, we've got the capability of being able to add images. You can see a very poor picture of the Princess Louise down there at the bottom. And as I say, images is one of the things that Lingo brings to the table that we've not had before. And at the moment, Lingo is a closed system. It's only for editors of vocabularies. But there is a plan to make Lingo available to the public through a public browser. And so the ability to browse images and find terminology which could then be used to search data sets, I think that's one of the great advantages of being able to add images to concepts. As I say, we don't all know what clawbeakers are, but if you can look at a picture, in the immortal words of Telly Savalas, if a picture paints 1,000 words, then why can't I paint you? Yeah, images are great. So just to recap, and I'm more than happy. I know this has been a rattle through, but more than happy to take any questions. But Lingo is going to enhance Arches with robust vocabulary control. It's going to support lifecycle management more than our old system did. Multilingual vocabularies, fair principles. It complements the controlled list manager. And at the moment, it's only controlled vocabularies. It's only concept-based vocabularies. But there is a plan for phase 2 to allow us to create and expand the vocabularies for people, periods, and places. So you could have authority files so that when you're talking about Giles Gilbert Scott, you're all talking about the person Giles Gilbert Scott and not just the string Giles Gilbert Scott. So, any questions? I hope that was useful.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I think there are a couple of questions. I don't know whether they've been answered.
Dream back on.
Where
am I? Let me just zoom.
I think Karina said, do the links mean you can also search the records by pubs?
That's I'm not sure, Karina, is the question. I'm not sure if, because I've used the AAT concept, whether or not I can search on the AAT concept in my data set. But it would make sense to be able to do that. It really would. So I will take that back to the team. I mean, you can search on pub anyway, because pub is the English non-preferred, the alternative label for the concept. So you'd be able to search on pub. Is the information in Lingo visible to general users, only to those with permissions? As I said, yeah, Renio. So at the moment, it's only visible to people who've got permissions to use it, and it can only be edited by editors. But it is a collaborative tool. So you could, for example, if you so wish, You can either run Lingo as a solo system, so a standalone system that all it does is it creates vocabularies. That's all it does. You don't link it to anything. Great, wonderful. I'd be happy with that because that's my job. My job is to create these vocabularies. If I could use Lingo as a standalone tool to just do that, that's fine by me. But if your organization is using software, whether it be Arches software or non-Arches software that uses those vocabularies, then you could create a network where you link, and Lingo is the control vocabulary manager for that suite of data sets, as it were. And in that instance, you could make a browsable version of Lingo available, a public browsing version, so that people looking for vocabularies can find the information, but they obviously can't get into the editing side. But they can browse the hierarchy, they can see the information for the concepts, but they wouldn't be able to, and they could see the images, but they wouldn't be able to go in and go tap, tap, tap and change the spelling or anything without the relevant permissions. And those permissions, because it's, as I say, it's because it's a collaborative tool. If I wanted to, as I do, want to open this up to the community, and we have a UK-wide instance of Lingo for the cultural heritage sector that allows colleagues in the agencies in Northern Ireland, Wales, and Scotland to also host their vocabularies in my instance of Lingo. Then you could also set the permissions so that I can't go in and edit the Welsh language terms, or I can't go in and edit the Welsh language vocabularies. I can only edit the vocabularies which I am the owner of, or which I take ownership for. So permissions in Arches is a very flexible, and you can lock down quite precisely what it is you want people to be able to see. Conscious Azadeh's had her hand up, so Azadeh.
Yes, Phil, thanks. I think I asked you a similar question, but now that George is also here, I wanted to ask about the ontological kind of modeling aspects of, for example, the image that I think it's very useful and powerful. But when a concept has different representation in different part of the area that you're working at, say, for if we're using existing vocabulary in Lingo from fish, and there's an enclosure, but enclosure, even in Africa, in different parts, has different, visually, it has different examples and than from India or Pakistan. So can this be mapped or modeled that different visual representations are kind of bound to one country or area, and kind of that differs when you go from one area to another? And similarly to that, I think was a question I asked you about preferred and other labels, like for pub in this country, that's your preferred label. But if I'm using your kind of the existing vocabulary, and taverna is my preferred label, would that also be able to model based on spatial restriction in Lingo?
I'm not sure about that one. The spatial restriction, I'm not sure about Azadeh, but all things are possible within.
Or is it the
I shall hand over to my
modeling
colleague
side?
George,
Yes.
who's going to talk more about the modelling side of things.
Sure, I can have a quick jump in. Thanks for the question, and I think it's a back and forth. You might have additional things to say once I say something, Phil. But basically, what we've applied so far in the back end of the modeling is that we went for a maximalist model that could capture the most richness. And we started from linked art, and we made it richer than linked art because we were looking at the richest models we could find, which included the present Getty vocabulary model, which has documentation, say for the link between the label and the concept. They have documentation for the time period for which that label was valid, and the group for which that label was valid. So you can identify, like, this is a concept which has different names associated to it. But we think it's the same concept. But we're going to say it's for this particular community from this time to that time. And so that could also change. You could also document and now this community from that time to that time uses a different word or
Different.
whatever. And also there were some flags for like, in, current or, no longer appropriate, that sort of thing would be possible. We, I don't think we did the complicated route on the images, but in theory we have, so the extension that we did for off of linked art is using this AAAO ontology, which models the social properties in CDOC CRM as classes instead of properties. And so each one of those allows you to make a pointer off to a group or a population. These social nodes like appellation status, classification status, and one of them is referential status, and that would work for images. So we might presently just have like the concept is shown by image, just a simple binary property. But in principle, we could make the more rich intermediate node where we could say for this group and that status node also has a pointer off to a place. So we could also enrich it by pointing to a place. Then we get into the management problems if you wanted to do it by geography or whatever, that you would have to then import basically a gazetteer with the geographical information or point to it so that you would, actually be able to do those sorts of spatial restrictions. But the model would allow it, and it's an interesting question to pose and bring up to Phil about whether or not that should be handled.
Okay, because I think when we were talking with Phil that if the hope or kind of the usefulness of Lingo is to have other kind of people working in other countries also to, instead of creating our own vocabulary and add it, kind of using the existing one, being able to do things like this, like markets in Central Asia might be, the bazaar might be the preferred label, but in India where I'm working now, Ginj is the word. So it's kind of to be able to do, instead of bringing up or kind of forward the terms and the images that's more useful in different part of the world as a either main label or the main imagery representation forward when you move from one country or region to another.
Yeah. I mean, you can. I'm not sure if you can. I'm not sure if you could draw a map and go, now give me the vocabulary that fits within this map as my preferred, my preferred vocabulary. But you can certainly set the parameters as to which one of these labels you want to be preferred in your particular instance.
In your area.
So you could take the monument type thesaurus, add your layer to it, and then go, for my data set, my layer is the preferred label that we want to use. You can certainly do that.
Right.
Yeah, and essentially the possibilities are there, whether or not like the tooling has been built to do it, but like to add, because it was inspired by this very rich Getty vocabulary model of the past, they had an idea of different points of view, like a temporal point of view, a cultural point of view, a spatial point of view. So the potential is built in for that. Even if the actual development for just facet me this isn't there, the documentation potential is built into the model.
Is built in. Thank you.
Hi, Phil, it's Paddy. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Quick question. How does Lingo relate to fish?
Lingo doesn't relate to fish. Lingo is a tool which fish will be using, shall we say, to manage our control vocabularies. At the moment, they're managed separately by each heritage agency, but we make the vocabularies available through heritagedata.org, which is a non-partisan website.
Yeah.
So we make the vocabularies available as linked open data, but they are created in, we have a tool, the Welsh have a tool, the Scots have a tool, the Northern Irish have a tool. What Lingo is intended to do is to give us a better tool that we can actually use collaboratively, so that we can actually start saying, oh, your concept in your thesaurus of monument types is the same as mine. And we've had an idea since the day after 9/11, strangely, when Becky Jones and I gave a presentation about this at the Museum Documentation Association conference, of the idea of a thesaurus of cultural heritage for the British and Irish islands, because
Yep.
culturally, we even though we are five separate nations, we've all got Georgian towns, we've all got Neolithic hill forts, we've all got Viking settlements. So it makes sense to actually, instead of having five vocabularies, to bring them all together under a big arching umbrella and be able to link the vocabularies so that you can say these objects are found in association with these monument types over these periods, which we've never been able to do because the vocabularies have been siloed. And we've never had a tool that's allowed us to do that. And we've never been
Yep.
politically equal, which is why when the Scots were developing their vocabulary, they took the English version and enhanced it to make and made it more Scottish, but it became the Scottish thesaurus. It's not the English thesaurus with Scottish terms. Similarly, the Welsh isn't the English thesaurus with Welsh terms. We just seeded that work for them. But now we want to bring those separately political vocabularies back together to allow us to use them collaboratively, and more importantly, across, so we can search across data sets in those British Isles so that you can do far more better research because you're able to use the same terminology to search multiple data sets. And at the moment,
Yeah.
the Irish are going through an all island process where they're beginning to hold talks about creating a controlled vocabulary for the island of Ireland. So this lingo will be the tool that will allow us to do that, because we'll be able to bring the expertise in the creation of the vocabularies to the subject matter experts, and we'll be able to guide how those vocabularies are developed. And so there will be a fish instance of lingo, as it were, that will be maintained on behalf of fish and its partners
Yep.
by Historic England, because
Okay.
somebody
So
needs to host it and somebody needs to pay for it.
sure. So given where we are right now, and on my particular project, which is all military stuff, is it better to start to focus on lingo sooner rather than later? It feels like Fish
Um,
has got First World War, general period, and some Second World War stuff, which and there's some fairly large gaps from our point of view in all of that. So where would that? Is it best to spin up a lingo instance and then seed it from fish and then just start working from that point?
It's probably best. Well, at the moment, Lingo's not quite live. Version one's due in about the end of March, Paddy. So, I
Suits
mean,
me.
you can you can have a go, and I think you can download the beta version from the repo if you wanted to. There's nothing to stop you doing that because it's free and it's open source software. So if you
Yeah,
wanted to do that, that's fine.
yeah. Maybe
But
I'll just pull it down and see technically how we want
yeah.
to run it. Yeah,
But yeah, you could also say, oh, well, actually, we want to piggyback off the fish instance. So, we'd like to use the fish instance, i.e., you'd like an editorial login so that you can manage your vocabs there, which again means that they're available and can be seen by the community. They're not necessarily
well,
siloed off. But that, again,
yeah.
that's I'm not trying to be a benevolent dictator here and say, oh no, you've got to use our
No, no,
version.
no. I understand. I understand completely. And from my point of view, we're uh, so I've started talking to the Imperial War and National Army Museum now to agree terms,
Yeah,
so to speak. Yeah, just get that taxonomy and the data structures sorted out collectively, so that going forward, at least a thing is a thing is a thing, right? Which I'm sure is very
yeah.
close to your heart. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and particularly the
yeah,
military side. Yeah,
yeah, with all the acronyms and abbreviations and all that kind of jazz.
I mean,
So
and
yeah,
I'm pretty sure that they will have vocabularies themselves already.
I
Which
yeah,
will need to be taken into account of.
yeah, absolutely, and I think that's where that kind of cross data mapping and where some of the gaps are, because each area needs are slightly different. Okay, thanks. That
Yeah.
answers that one. Thanks very much. Yeah, keep you posted. The only other one on that, whatever's going on with AI, keep you posted, please. I'm heavily working in that area at the moment, so yeah, that
Will
would be
do.
interesting. Thanks. See how to mute this now.
Right, we're approaching 1 o'clock. Anything that anybody else wants to raise very quickly? No. I think possibly in future meetings, maybe we could. Thanks, Julian. I think maybe we'll have a little section for updates around projects. One of the things that we're looking at is QGIS as Samuel has launched his QGIS Arches plugin, and we're exploring that. So I think it'd be quite good if we had just went round projects next time, just have a little update about things that people are working on. I'd just like to thank Phil very much for his presentation. That's really interesting, and thanks for letting us know about the launch date. Will there be an official announcement on the community forum about when it's ready officially to go live, Phil? Do you know?
Inevitably, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's there is it's on the roadmap.
Mhm.
I'm saying the end of March because that's when I think we'd agreed it was going to be. It might be the end of April. I can't quite remember.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Dennis and I are giving a presentation at Taxonomy Bootcamp, or we're supposed to be on Lingo. So and that's April the 15th. So I'd like to be able to at least say that it's either here already or it's on its way.
Okay, cool.
And I'm pretty sure it's the end of March.
Yeah. I think, going on what Paddy said, maybe one of the other future conversation we could have is around AI and arches. I think it'd be quite interesting to know if anybody else is looking at using AI with arches after the discussions we had in LA. Right. Thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions. The next meeting, I think we're looking at the 26th of March. Obviously, there'll be emails around updating about that, and it will be either 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, possibly 12 o'clock, I think.
12:30.
Or 12:30, you have to hedge. Yeah, yeah. Let's hedge our bets and go something like that. Anyway, but we'll let you all know in good time. So just thanks everybody. Take care and see you at the next meeting.